All right, so we will, without further ado, we'll let folks trickle in as I um, start the intro here. But good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's business support series, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, a new way of running your business. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Josh Creighton, the Community Engagement Specialist here with the Halifax Chamber of Commerce, and your host for today. So yeah, I'm excited for this webinar. Excited to introduce our guest, but I'll give you just a quick intro about what you're in store for today. So an entrepreneurial operating system, or EOS rather, is a people-operated system aimed at harnessing the human energy that exists within an organization. This energy is harnessed through a set of timeless principles and tools. These tools were derived from great business minds like J.D. Rockefeller, Jim Collins, Stephen Covey, and they're now used in close to 100,000 companies across the world. So some pretty important stuff, and I'm excited to learn. Thank you everyone who submitted questions for our presenter today. When you get a chance, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A as they arise, and a presenter will either answer them on the spot as it relates, or we'll have some designated time at the end of the near the end of the webinar to fully discuss those questions and concerns. But yeah, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Joe DePinta. Joe is an EOS implementer and happens to be the only one in Atlantic Canada. He works passionately with entrepreneurs and their leadership teams to help them break through the ceiling and continue their growth. Joe is also an ex-NHLer who uses his competitive spirit to fuel his passion for EOS. Super cool. Welcome, Joe, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Josh. Thanks for having me. So as Josh mentioned, I played in the NHL. My claim to fame is I was the first hockey player to bring the Stanley Cup back to Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia. I have my Stanley Cup ring on here today, so this is a good icebreaker. And I'm going to ask you guys in the chat right now to if anybody gets this right. I've never had anyone get this answer correctly. So on my Stanley Cup ring, I'll explain all the different parts of the ring. And the bonus question is how many diamonds are in the Stanley Cup ring for the 2007 Anaheim Ducks? I'm not sure if it's on Google or not, so you could probably cheat and try to find out, but it does have a symbolism for the season. I'll give you a hint. So there's 16 big diamonds that make up the Stanley Cup. You can see that represents 16 wins in the regular season. That's a bit of a hint. On the side, it has the players. It says California's first cup. I don't know if you can see it. It says 2007, California's first cup. That was the first time a California team had ever won the Stanley Cup. And on this side of the ring, it has the player's last name. So, and then even if you're not a hockey fan, you've probably heard of the Mighty Ducks movies. You can see a little Mighty Duck symbol right there under, just above the 33. That is to pay homage to the original team that came in the league in 1993. And then there's 11 green diamonds along the side that symbolize every season. They were called the Mighty Ducks when Disney owned the team, then a white diamond when they sold the team, and then 2 orange diamonds that symbolize the change of the name to Anaheim Ducks, and that's what the franchise is called here today. So if anyone wants to take a guess at how many diamonds are in the ring, and again, it's a symbolic for how many. I'll give you the answer is how many points we had in the regular season. So if anyone wants to take a guess now, you could probably quick Google. I don't see anyone going for it, so I'll just tell you 7. No, it's more than 7. It was 110 diamonds that make up the ring, 1 for each point in the regular season. Wow. So that's my icebreaker. Today we're going to talk about an EOS operating system. I'm going to share my screen, and we'll begin the presentation. Here we go. Okay, so there are 3 parts of the presentation today. The first part is about us. The second part I'm going to go through, I'm just going to share with you some information about how I got involved, how the system was created. This next part is all about the tools. I'm going to go through all of the tools that represent EOS to help businesses get more control over their business. And then if there's time, there's process. So everything I'm going to share with you today was created by a lifelong entrepreneur named Gino Wickman. Gino started as an entrepreneur at the age of 21, and at the age of 25, he inherited his family business. His family business needed a turnaround, So he worked with the leadership team for about 3 years to turn the business around. After about 7 years, he sold the company and he worked with the new leadership team for a year and a half before retiring from that business. During that time, he was one of the founding 10 members of the Detroit EO chapter, so entrepreneurs organization. And it was through working with other entrepreneurs that he realized he had a real knack and passion for what made up a truly great entrepreneurial organization. After he retired from that business, he decided to pursue that knack and passion full time. That's when he began cobbling together the tools and disciplines and principles that make up EOS today. He wrote a book in 2008 that was called Traction. So everything I'm going to share with you today can be found in this book, Traction. And we find this is the best and fastest way to transfer all the information that's in the book and give you guys information to see if this could be a fit for your business. If anybody feels like this could be valuable at the end of the presentation, I will put my contact information in the chat. You feel free to reach out to me and contact me. I'm happy to give this presentation again, along with the parts of the presentation that I couldn't fit in, and which are how you go about implementing this into your business. So I'm going to give you all the information minus that part, which I will save, but it's free of charge. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to give this presentation again at your place of business. So that's a little bit about Gino, how I got involved. I got involved after I retired from playing in the NHL. I was running a team of 6 or 7 people, and I was a startup for a new region in our organization. The president that hired me, he told me that I would never make a certain revenue threshold in Atlantic Canada. And after I retired from that role, I had exceeded that revenue target by 50%. As a result, I was promoted to Vice President of Canada. I had 50 staff from coast to coast. We had a high turnover issue with our staff. And I also inherited a budget of $13 million that had 5 straight years of declining revenues. So 5 straight years, every year revenues were on the decline. And I knew I needed something to help me. I needed something to give me more control. That's when I was introduced to the book Traction and the system EOS through one of my chairs of the board that I was working with at the time. And he gave me the book. I read it. We implemented the tools and disciplines in year 1. We had our turnaround year, our revenues, double-digit growth after 5 straight years of decline. We transformed our culture, started to get that turnover rate down and getting the right people in the right seats. And ultimately, we had a strong, cohesive leadership team. I loved the system from day one. I pursued training to become an expert in all of the EOS tools. And that led to me several years later becoming an implementer. And that's what I am today. That's how I got involved. The more I work with EOS, the more I see the parallels of how you build a winning hockey team. And I'll explain what I mean. EOS has three basic things that happen when you implement EOS. The first one is vision. You get everybody in your organization rowing in the same direction. Everywhere you look, you see people executing on your vision with discipline and accountability. And all of the teams I played on, and I've played on all the championship teams, not every team that I played on, all the championship teams I played on, I played 2 professionally and 4 in the amateurs. We were more disciplined and accountable than teams that I played on that were not winning. Okay, and then the last part is health. And what we mean by health is you get a strong, cohesive leadership team, and everybody in the organization loves working with each other. The championship teams I played on, we loved playing together on the ice, but we also loved being together off the ice. And it was a totally different feeling than teams I played on that weren't championship teams. So if you believe those 3, vision, traction, and health, are part of a winning formula for building a great business, then EOS will resonate with you. So that's a little bit about Gino, a little bit about me and how I got involved. The next part is really about the EOS tools. So this is where I'm going to open up the firehouse and just kind of hit you with everything I've got. We find this is the best and fastest way to transfer information, to see if this is something that could be of value to you and your business. So I'm going to start with explaining a model. I'm going to do a first pass at a high level, but we always start with your business at the center. There was a discovery that all entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial leaders struggle with 136 issues simultaneously. But to the extent that they strengthen 6 key components of their business, those 136 issues fell into place because they were truly symptoms of a root cause. Okay, so that's what I'm going to explain to you. I'm going to explain to you this model. And I'm going to just go through it at a very high level at first, and then I'm going to do a second pass around. I'm going to speak to the tools, disciplines, and principles involved in each of the components. So the first key component is what we call vision. This shouldn't be a surprise. Anyone that's in business knows, or is trying to create a winning team, knows that they have to start with vision. You have to have a compelling vision. Vision is all about understanding where you're going, and everybody in the organization grasping it. So everybody, it's about knowing where you're going, how you're going to get there. The second key component is what we call people. Quite frankly, you can't achieve a great vision without great people. So I'm going to explain to you how we go about getting great people in our organization. The third key component, what we call data. Data is all about understanding the facts and figures so that we can make the best decisions possible, and we're not relying on subjective emotions or egos that often plague entrepreneurial organizations. Once we're clear on these three components, we're going to have a very lucid and transparent organization. And that's why the fourth key component is what we call issues. We're going to start to see these imperfections, impurities, things that are challenging, obstacles and barriers. And we have to get really good at naming those issues. And then once we've named them, becoming really good at solving them. So that's why the fourth key component is what we call issues. The fifth key component is what we call process. This is all about getting the most important things done in your business the right way and best way every single time. This will create scalability and ultimately more profit and a more fun work environment. Finally, the last key component is what we call traction, and it comes from the book, but essentially this means bringing the vision down to the ground and executing that vision day in and day out. And it's no coincidence that vision's at the top and traction's at the bottom. Unfortunately, this is where most entrepreneurs fail, is executing on their vision. So vision without traction is hallucination. And this is a journey to strengthen these 6 key components. So EOS, if you implement EOS, it's strengthening these 6 key components of your business. So those 136 issues that you tend to deal with and ignore, you strengthen them. And we measure this journey on a scientific but subjective scale of 0 to 100% strong. Our goal in this process is to get your business and these 6 key components to 80% or stronger, knowing that 100% of anything just isn't reasonable or possible. But we measure this. We want to get you to 80% or stronger. Most businesses are succeeding despite themselves, in that they are somewhere around the 20% in these 6 key components. So we want to get you 4 times better than probably where you're at today, and probably where your competition is. So this becomes a competitive advantage and ultimately helps us break through the ceiling and continue to grow and grow and grow and create a healthy business. So those are the 6 key components. I'm going to go through them now one at a time and talk to the tools and disciplines we use within each. The first one within the model that I'm going to speak to is what we call the vision component. Again, this is about knowing where we're going and how we're going to get there. And the first tool or discipline I want to speak to is something we call the 8 questions. And the 8 questions are found in this tool that we use called the Vision Traction Organizer. And 8 questions. So the first 5 questions on this tool are found in the orange boxes. So what are your core values? What is your core focus? What is your 10-year target? What is your marketing strategy? What is your 3-year picture? And then we turn to the second page of the tool and we find the last 3 of the 8 questions. What is your 1-year plan? What are your rocks? And what is your issues list? So I'm going to take those one at a time. Core values, as I'm sure most of us are aware, are a set of guiding characteristics that define who we are at the core and what we want from the culture of our organization. When we go through this EOS process, we first discover what they are because they exist already. It's not something we create. We don't look at the Netflix deck and say, wow, that's inspiring, I want to pull from that one. That's a trap. We have to discover what they are because they actually already exist within our company. So we want to first discover them. Then we want to define them. What does it mean? How can we explain that to others, what we're trying to say and what the core value means? So we define it. And then we want to live and breathe by it. Okay. And once we go through the people component, I'm going to show you how we're going to apply these core values to not only attract the right people to our organization, but also use them to repel the wrong people from the organization. So that's core values. The next question that we would answer together as a leadership team is, what is our core focus? Core focus is split up into two parts: our purpose, cause, or passion, and our niche. And combined, it defines our sweet spot. This has been called a variety of things in the history of business. Stephen Covey calls it voice. Some people call it vision statement, mission statement. Jim Collins calls it the hedgehog concept. We call it core focus because it comes from the core. And quite frankly, I think there's some trademark issues. Sorry about the new consulting term. But essentially, once we discover what this is, the goal is to stay laser focused on it so we don't get distracted and chase the shiny stuff. So the best companies in the world, they stay focused on what they're best at. So that's core focus. The third question that we would answer together is, what is our 10-year target? 10-year target is a long range business goal. So it's the number one thing we want from the business. It could be anywhere from 5 to 30 years out. It doesn't have to be 10 years, but it's a long range number one business goal of the organization. What is the number one thing we're trying to achieve in this business? It should be motivating, energizing. Jim Collins, in his book that he wrote, Built to Last, when he studied the greatest companies in the world, he discovered that they all had something called a BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. So this is a BHAG that we would create. And again, it's one thing that we're chasing anywhere from 5 to 30 years out. So that's 10-year target. The next, after we define 10-year target, we then go about looking at our marketing strategy. Marketing strategy is divided up into 4 parts. And marketing strategy is really simply designed to get you all on the same page. Everybody's on the same page with who you should talk to and what you should say to get the biggest return on investment and the precious sales and marketing energy. So we look at target market, 3 uniques, proven process, and guarantee. And I'll go through those briefly one at a time. Target market is the geographic, psychographic, and demographic of the ideal prospect, person, or company that we should be talking to. And once we understand who we should talk to, then we look to say, what are we going to say to them? 3 uniques are 3 differentiating characteristics that make us better than the competition. Okay, then we move on to proven process, which is simply a 1-page visual illustration of what it looks like to do business with us from the time you start thinking about working with a client to the time they become a lifelong trusted partner of yours. And then finally, the guarantee, and this is adopted 50% of the time, 50% of the time it's not, is simply a pledge or a promise that reduces the fear of adoption in the sales and marketing process. So that's marketing strategy. Once we have defined our core values, we're going to know who we are at the core. We're going to know what we're best at and why we're in this business with our core focus. Then we're going to know where we're going long term with our 10-year target. And then we've defined how we're going to get there with our marketing strategy. We're then ready to move on to the 5th question, which is what we call the 3-year picture. And this is where we begin to crystallize what it looks like and really bring it down to the ground. We don't go through a complicated, 5-year strategic planning process here. This is a very simplified approach to strategic planning. We set a revenue goal and a profit goal and a measurable. And then we get everybody in the leadership team to describe what they see 3 years from now. We want people to imagine what this business is going to look like 3 years from now. And we describe it in the 5 to 15 bullet points underneath. What does it look like? The advantage of everybody on the leadership team seeing the same thing is going to create two advantages. The first is when everybody in the leadership team can see the same thing, the chances of us getting there are that much stronger. It's also going to set us up for a great 1-year plan. And so that's when we come down to the traction side of the document and answer the final 3 questions, and I'll take those one at a time. 1-year plan is we first define the future date, so the end of the fiscal year. We set a revenue prediction, profit prediction, and a measurable prediction. And then we set 3 to 7 goals for the year. So it's not 23 goals for the year, 3 to 7, because less is more. If everything's important, nothing is important. So we set those 3 to 7 goals for the company for the year. Once we've answered this question, we then move on to what are our rocks? Rocks are 90-day business objectives. Stephen Covey made this term famous, Vern Harnish made this term famous in his book Scaling Up, but it originally came from Stephen Covey. Okay, so rocks, 90-day business objectives. We want to make a prediction every quarter on our revenue, profit, and a measurable. And then we set 3 to 7 90-day business objectives or rocks as a company for the next quarter. Okay. We also set 3 to 7 rocks as individuals on a leadership team. This is going to get everybody really breaking it down into 90-day increments. Everything's aligned with their 1-year plan or 3-year picture and their 10-year target. So really creating that alignment throughout the company. Eventually, we'll migrate this discipline to every employee in the company. So every employee has at least 1 to 3 rocks, and everybody can see how they're contributing to the overall greater production of the company. So issues list is, as we go through this process, there are going to be a number of barriers or challenges that are going to be mentioned as we think through how we're going to get to some of these goals and long range. So we want a place to put these issues. And so that's why the 8th question is, what is our issues list? Because again, we want to get good at naming these issues. And then I get to the issues component, I'm going to show you how we're going to solve them effectively and make them go away forever. So that's the Vision Traction Organizer. Whether you use EOS or not, I encourage you guys to look at this tool. It's available for free on the website. It's a great tool, really simplify your vision about how and about how you're going to get there. So I encourage you guys to check it out. The second tool of discipline we use to strengthen the vision component is something called Shared by All. Quite simply, this is getting the message out there, the vision shared over and over and over and over again, because we know it takes 7 times for people to hear it for the first time. It has to come from the leaders, where they're continuously sharing this with the entire company. So this is how we're going to get everybody rowing in the same direction with understanding where we're going and how we're going to get there. So that's how we strengthen the vision component. That's how we get it to 100% strong. The second key component is we call the people component. And this could sound familiar if you've read Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, when we talk about having the right people on the bus. And the 2 tools and disciplines we use to strengthen the people component, for us to feel assured that we've got the right people in the organizations, we call right people in the right seats. And you have to have both. You can't just have the right people and people in the right seats. You have to have right people and right seats. And the first tool in the discipline we're going to speak to is right people. Right people are simply people who fit the culture of the organization. And the way we feel, the tool we use to ensure we've got people that fit the core values of the organization is we use a people analyzer. It's a simple tool where we put all of our core values that we discovered on our Vision Traction Organizer across the top. And then we list all of our employees down the left-hand side, and we evaluate. If we've got 40 employees, we put 40 names. If we've got 250 employees, put all 250 names. And then we go about evaluating each of these employees against our core values. So plus is most of the time they exhibit this core value. Minus is they rarely exhibit this core value. And plus minus means sometimes they exhibit this core value. We go about evaluating every single employee in the company. We then set a standard, which we call the bar. As a company, we set this as a standard that we accept. And this is how we can feel good about having the right people in the organization. Okay, right seats, we use a tool, something called the accountability chart. And when we're building an accountability chart, we always start with structure first and people second. An accountability chart works like this. So every organization in the world, there's an assumption that every organization, every company in the world has 3 major functions. Okay, the first function is a sales and marketing function, where they go out into the marketplace, they create a demand, and then they turn that demand into orders. All companies and organizations would have an operations function, where they either deliver a service, build a product, or both. And then all companies, organizations would have a finance function, where they track money in and out of the organization and manage assets. All companies and organizations would also have a 4th seat, which is what we call integrator. Integrator is the person that beats the drum of the organization, harmoniously makes these major business functions work together. Okay. And then after we go through this exercise together with the accountability chart, we ensure that we customize this to ensure that this is right for your organization. So how we do that is we first work at the marketing, sales, operations, and finance level. And we say, okay, marketing and sales, is that 1 seat in your organization, that 1 major business function? Or sometimes it's 2. Operations can sometimes be 2, 3, or even 4 major business functions. And finance oftentimes is split up into more than 1 business function as well, if you break out IT, HR, and finance. Every organization and company has to have a leader Google actually tried this experiment recently and it failed miserably. They tried getting rid of all of the management within their structure, and people suffered because of it. But then we go about customizing. The final part of customizing this is 50% of the time, a business looks like an integrator with the major business functions underneath it. And then 50% of the time, there's somebody in the company already that is what we call visionary. And so if there is a visionary, we call it out, we add it to the chart. And the visionary is somebody that has 20 ideas for every meeting, is always thinking into the future, is a dreamer by nature. They don't really, they're always pushing forward, and really they're not always grounded in reality of things. So if you have a visionary leading the company, there's often a lot of new ideas, a lot of 90-day spikes that happen with the fresh new idea. And if you have a visionary, it's great because their growth mindset, and if we have one, we name it. And this is how we go about customizing the accountability chart for your unique organization. We then go about, after we define this, we have the seats, we then go about defining them. So we take every one of the functions listed at the top, and then we say, what are the 3 to 5 roles in each of the functions? So each of those seats have 3 to 5 roles. And this is what it would look like as an example for marketing and sales. Potentially, you would say marketing and sales, they manage people. So we represent that by LMA, which stands for lead, manage, and hold accountable. And then you would have the accountabilities for this particular seat, okay? We can go about doing that for every seat on the leadership team. Okay, so as a hockey example, if we had a centerman, this is what it could look like. And this is how, only at this point, once we have the center function defined or the seat defined, do we then go about putting a name in the seat? Do we recommend a name? So we're always structure first, people second. So we've defined what the seat looks like. And then we use a tool called Get It, Want It, Have Capacity, which we abbreviate GWC. So the first part is get it. Does this person, so does Joe get it? Does he have the innate ability to win faceoffs? So is he innate ability to win faceoffs, create scoring chances, score goals, back check, defend, and minimize turnovers? Yes or no? Does Joe want it? Does he jump out of bed to win faceoffs every game, create scoring chances, score goals, back check, defend, and minimize turnovers? And the answer has to be yes. Does Joe have the capacity to do it? Does he have the skills and training to win faceoffs, create scoring chances, score goals, back check and defend, minimize turnovers? So then we go about adding GWC to our people analyzer with our people. And then we say, does Maria get it, want it, and have capacity to do it? Yes, and we have to have yes to all 3 for Maria to win the seat. We do the same with all of our employees in whatever seat that they're in. And the bar that we set, and there is non-negotiable, we have to have yeses to all 3 of those questions before we can know somebody's in the right seat. So it's always structure first, people second. And this is how we go about ensuring we've got people in the right seats. So we then migrate this throughout the entire organization, and so that we build out the seats for every single seat in the company, not just at leadership team level. And then once we do this, we're gonna have 2 kinds of people issues. The first is we're gonna have the right person in the wrong seat. This is somebody that you love to work with, but they're not performing well in their job. Okay, they fit the core values, you love them, they're a great culture fit, but they're just not performing. So you get right person in the wrong seat. The good news is that once you build out all the seats in the company, you're going to have some potentially new seats to put somebody. So if you've got an open seat and somebody you think would be really good at those roles that are defined in that seat, you can go about putting them in that seat. So if you've got the right person in the wrong seat, it's not the end of the world. You might be able to find a new seat for them. If you can't find a new seat, you're going to have to make the tough decision and let them go. That's just the reality of business. The second issue that you're going to run into is you're going to have the wrong person in the right seat. This is somebody that really performs well at their job. They blow their numbers out of the water, top performer, but unfortunately, nobody can stand working with them. And there really is no seat for this person. You have to make the tough decision and cut them loose, and because they're doing more harm than you even know about. So those are the 2 people issues that we're going to run into. That's right people, right seats. That's how we get it to 100% strong in your business. The third key component is what we call data. Data is all about drilling down to the facts and figures that make up a truly great, so we can make decisions on these facts and figures and not on subjective emotions or egos that often plague entrepreneurial organizations. And to illustrate ego and making decisions, there's a great quote by former Netscape CEO Jim Barksdale. He said that if we have data, let's look at the data. If all we have are opinions, then let's go with mine. So that's how ego plays into making decisions in a leadership team. That's why data is so important. And the tools and disciplines we use to strengthen the data component, the first one is what we call scorecard. So it's a simple scorecard. I'll show you what it looks like. It's 5 to 15 measurables that give us an absolute pulse on our business on what's working every week. So these are weekly measurables that give us an absolute pulse on what's working and what's not working. So once we've got our measurables, we then set a weekly goal for each of these measurables, and then we assign an owner, somebody that is accountable for these measures and hitting these numbers on a weekly basis. We then look at 13 weeks at a glance of data. So anytime we look at this scorecard, every week we look at this scorecard, we'll be able to see 13 weeks at a glance, which will be able to help us spot trends and give us an absolute pulse on what's working in the business and what's not working on the business. And these are measurables that give us that. So 5 to 15 is our goal. We create this scorecard first as a tool for the leadership team. So they have a pulse on what's working, what's not working. We then migrate this discipline and tool throughout all of the teams in the company. So every team has their own unique scorecard that gives them a pulse on what's working in their team and their department. And the second tool of discipline we use to strengthen the data components we call measurables. So everybody in the company has at least 1 to 3 measurables that they're responsible for and hitting on a weekly basis, so that everybody in the company feels like they're contributing to the overall productivity and towards our vision. So that's how we strengthen the data component to get it to 100% strong. As I mentioned earlier, once we're really strong in the vision component, really strong in the people component with the right people in the right seats, and we've got a functioning scorecard that is giving a pulse on what's working, what's not working, we are going to spot issues. We're going to have a very transparent and lucid organization. So that's why the fourth key component is what we call the issues component. We have to get really good at identifying issues and then solving those issues. And the first tool that we're going to speak to is something we call the issues list. We want to create a culture where every employee in the company is able to recognize issues and then name those issues. And we need a place for those issues to go. And that's why the first tool is we call issues list. So once we create an issues list, we have to, and we have that culture where people are naming issues, we have to get good at knocking those or setting those issues up and then knocking them down at the root and making them go away forever. And that's why the second discipline that I'm going to speak to is something we call IDS. And I'll explain what that acronym means, but it's an issue solving track. It's going to help us solve these issues at the root and make them go away forever. All right. So how this works is if we have an issues list, the first thing we're going to do is have an issues list, and then we're going to look at our issue solving track, which is IDS, and I'll explain what it means. So identify is we want to get to the root cause of what's happening, then we want to discuss the issue, and then we want to solve it. So we take our issues list. The first thing we do is we're going to prioritize. In a second, I'll explain that even great leadership teams have a problem with solving issues at the root. So even great leadership teams, they'll get into a room, they try to tackle an issue, and what they end up doing is they discuss the heck out of it. They discuss it at length. Rarely do they ever take the time to get to the root of what's happening and why this issue is occurring. Rarely do they ever have an action plan that makes this issue go away, and therefore rarely do they ever solve anything. So this happens even in great leadership teams, and that's why we created this issue solving track. So the first step in the issue solving track is first we prioritize our issues. So we say we don't take them one at a time. We say, what are the issues we need to solve first? If we only get to one today, what's the one thing we need to solve? And we prioritize, then we start with issue 1, and then we go about identify. And identify is to dig underneath what is written on this issues list, because oftentimes what's written is a symptom. So we want to get to the root cause of what's written on the piece of paper. Once we all agree around the table as a leadership team what is going on, then we agree, then we go to discuss. So everybody in the leadership team has a chance to weigh in. what they think's going on, what we think we need to do. And then once the conversation gets redundant and people start saying the same thing twice, that's called politicking. We want to prevent that. We then move to solve. Okay, what are the action items that are going to make this issue go away? We record those actions on a to-do list, and then we move on. We assume issue number 1 has now been solved. We move on to issue number 2, and we do the same thing. We IDS issue number 2, and then finally issue number 3. And eventually, leadership teams will get through 3, 6, and even 9 issues at a time in their weekly meetings. So those are the 2 tools and disciplines we use to strengthen the issues component, get those issues identified, and then knocking them down at the root, making them go away forever. This is going to make the business more easy to manage, really create an environment where we're working on the business regularly, removing those obstacles and barriers that are ticking us off, frustrating us, and getting in the way of achieving our vision. And that's how we get to 100% strong in issues. The 5th key component is what we call process. Process is about getting the most important things done in the business the right way and best way every single time. And the 2 tools and disciplines we use, the first one is what we call document. How document works is every business has a handful of core processes. Every business has a handful. 6 to 10 is typically the rule of thumb. These are some examples. People, we have to go into the marketplace, acquire talent, and manage that talent. Marketing, this is where we create a demand in the marketplace. And then when we turn that demand into orders, that's what we call the sales. Businesses typically have 2 or 3 or 4 operations processes. Businesses typically have a way of managing their clients or accounts, we call customer service, and of course, managing finances with accounting. So once we've identified the core processes, the first discipline we speak to is documenting. If anyone's read the E-Myth book, the E-Myth by Gerber, he talks about really identifying your core processes and documenting them. So you document all of your core processes that you've identified in your unique business, and then you go about simplifying those core processes. So what are the 20% of the steps required to get 80% of the results in each of those 6 to 10 core processes? So this is what it would look like if you've got a people process. These are the high level steps, the 20% to give you 80% of the results. You go about doing that for all of the processes. Eventually you'll have all of your processes in one place. Your 6 to 10 processes, you might have anywhere from a 1-pager for each up to 5 pages max. So the 20/80 rule, and you'll have a nice booklet that you can call Your Company Way, which will really clarify your system and how you work. Systemize the predictable so you can humanize the exceptional. This is from one of the greatest customer service organizations in the world, Four Seasons Hotels. And that's what it's all about. We really want to get good at documenting these core processes. And the second tool of discipline is what we call followed by all. Anybody that shares a piece of these core processes need to be trained so they can do it the right way and best way every single time. So the first one is we need to train them, then we need to measure them, and then we need to hold them accountable to make sure they're done the right way and best way every single time. And that's going to create consistency, scalability, more profit, and eventually your business will be a more fun workplace. And that's what we're going for. So that's how we get document it, followed by all. That's how we strengthen the process component, get it to 100% strong. The final key component is what we call the traction component. Traction is all about bringing the vision down to the ground and executing that vision day in and day out with discipline and accountability. Unfortunately, this is where most entrepreneurs fail, is at the traction component. So I'm going to share with you the 2 tools and disciplines we use to strengthen the traction component, get this execution on the vision to 100% strong. The first tool or discipline is what we call rocks, and the second is what we call meetings. Rocks, I mentioned earlier, are 90-day business objectives. So we're creating a 90-day world within your company. Studies show that after about 90 days, we start to fade. We start to leak. It's hard for us to stay focused on where we're going and aligned with our vision. So that's why we create this 90-day world. And how the 90-day world works is we go into the business with a set of rocks, 3 to 7 as a company, 3 to 7 as individuals on a leadership team, and eventually 1 to 3 with every employee in the company. Everybody has their 90-day business objectives, their top priorities they need to achieve in this quarter. We then come back for air after 90 days. We look back and see how we did. How did we do against our rocks? And if we always check to make sure too, after 90 days that we're still aligned with our vision. So we do a check-in on our vision traction organizer, make sure we're still aligned because sometimes we're not. We then set new rocks at that point. We go back into the business and execute with excellence for another 90 days. And then we rinse and repeat this cycle in perpetuity. So we're always creating that 90-day world. Within that 90-day world, we create another discipline, which is called our meeting pulse. This happens on a weekly basis. It's the same day every week, the same time every week, starts on time, ends on time, and it has the exact same agenda. And what the agenda looks like is what we call a level 10 meeting agenda. And if I was to ask each of you to evaluate your meetings in your company, most of you would probably give it somewhere a 4 or 5, 6, probably max, in terms of how well you guys are doing in your meetings. The goal of this is to get you to a 10 or better. So that's what we call it, a level 10 meeting, because we're going to rate it at the end. And the goal is to get you guys to a 10 out of 10 every single meeting. And this agenda will work for you guys. So this is another great tool to take away from this presentation, to start using this. And I'm just going to go through this one at a time. So level 10, it's the same agenda every week. And we always start in checking in on one of the most important things in the business to make sure they're working or not working. Okay, so we check in on the scorecard, the 5 to 15 measurables. We review our rocks as a company, as individuals, to see if they're on track or off track. And we always check in on our key stakeholders, our customers and employees, to see if they're happy or not. So we always do our check-in on reporting. This takes discipline. In this section, it takes a lot of discipline to just keep it to reporting and not getting off on a tangent and discussing. So we're just doing reporting. Then we build in accountability. So not only are we disciplined as a team, we're more accountable with our to-do list. So these are the action items from the previous week's meeting. So we build in accountability, and we want to get 90% of these to-dos from to-dos to done. So they come off the list. And then that allows us, when we're efficient and disciplined and accountable in this section, it allows us to spend 2/3 of the meeting time, so 60 minutes of the 90-minute total meeting, on solving issues. We then look at our issues list, we identify our first issue, and we use IDS to solve it at the root and make it go away forever. Eventually, teams will get through 3, 6, 9 issues at a time. This is where the meetings are fun. Meetings should be fun and engaging. There should be conflict. It should be like a great movie where we show up, we're not sure how it's going to end, there's conflict. And this is how we feel like we're, as a team, we're building traction towards our vision on a weekly basis. We always conclude on time, so with 5 minutes to go, we end. And this is a discipline that will create every week 90 minutes of working on the business. So we're always transitioning from working in the business now working on the business for 90 minutes, and that's will pay dividends in the long run. So those are the two tools and disciplines we use to get to 100% strong in the traction component. So that is the end of my presentation. And again, this is the journey. EOS is all about strengthening these 6 key components. Get each of these components to 100% strong with your business at the center, and really get you guys to 80% or better when most of us are somewhere around the 20%. So succeeding despite ourselves. And imagine how much greater our workplace could be by strengthening all these 6 components. So that's my presentation. If anybody would like I'm going to leave my information in the chat. If anyone would like to learn how you go about implementing this in your business, I can come in, do this presentation again, and really go through the final part, which is going through how this is best implemented into a business. Happy to do that. Feel free to contact me with my phone number or email, and I'm happy to come back in and give you guys, as a leadership team, this whole presentation again and really go through this in more detail. But that's the end of my time, and I'll turn it back over to Josh if anyone has any questions, thoughts, or feedback.
Thank you so much, Joe. That was amazing. That was very informative, super informative. Actually, Joe, I mean, I appreciate you going back to the camera, but if you want to leave that last slide, that information up just for a second, so people can get that down, because I was blown away. It was super informative. I'm sure it'll help me and a lot of other people. So if you have any questions, folks, pop them in the chat. Be sure to find Joe on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on all the social media platforms. Follow him. I'll start off with a question of my own, if you don't mind, Joe.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. So I guess the first question would be, does it matter when is the right time, right? Is to start implementing these EOS principles? Is it right when you like a few months into when you have your business idea? Is it before you start bringing on team members, or should you do it maybe when it's you and the owner brainstorming the initial venture idea?
So EOS is designed to implement with a leadership team. No, the ideal EOS company is anywhere from 2 million in revenue to 50 million in revenue, and 10 employees to 250 employees. That's kind of the sweet spot. Some companies are less than that, some are more. There's companies that I know of that have close to 1,000 employees that run an EOS. Well, that seems to be the sweet spot. So if you're in that range, 2 million to 50 million, 10 to 250 employees, this could be a really great fit. How a lot of times I run into, well, I don't have a leadership team, or what is that? Who should be on my leadership? Who should be in these meetings? And it's just most companies aren't disciplined at running through a leadership team where they have weekly leadership team meetings. So what I say is, the folks that you feel like you would gather together to make a major business decision. So typically that's a financial, somebody that's leading the financial side, somebody leads the sales and marketing side, and somebody leads the operations side. So bringing together those people for this presentation so they get a feel for it and how this is going to impact the way they do their business and help them is what I always recommend. So, but it's always done at the leadership team level. So I work with leadership team only. This isn't something I would do just one-on-one with an owner. This is really for the leadership team to empower that leadership team. And we go through all those tools and customize them for their unique organization.
Okay. Thank you for that. And what is now, mind you, using these principles and strategies, ongoing commitment, but how much time does it take for a company to adopt these principles in the first place and implement them?
Yeah, so within the first 60 days, we can get through the foundational tools, which are the Rock scorecard, meeting pulse, vision traction organizer, and I always forget I can never give all 5 at the same time, but we get those 5 foundational tools implemented within the first 60 days. And accountability chart was the 5th one. So we really create that clear structure for the leadership team and then start to build it out for the rest of the organization. But we really create that foundation, those five EOS tools in the first 60 days. That's 3 meetings together. And then we go about, it's all execution from that point forward. So we're really driving it forward. It typically takes about 2 years for a company to master all of the system and the tools. At that point, I get out of the picture. There's a graduation point that's really up to the leadership team when they feel like they've mastered each of these tools and they've implemented throughout the entire company. And so that's my goal, is to get a company to graduation. My goal isn't to be a consultant or embed myself into the organization. I really get the company, the leadership team trained in how to do it. And so they master the tools themselves, and then they run the system, run their business, and then I remove myself from the picture. So that's how we go about doing it. Is really the first 3 sessions is really getting those 5 foundational tools. So the leadership team masters them, and then we focus on execution there on out, and getting every employee in the company, that every team will implement those 5 foundational tools at some point in the future.
Makes sense. Okay, I see we do have a question in the chat. Which one of the 5 core functions are the most challenging to implement?
Yeah,
both
Drew.
short and long-term
yeah,
execution.
Yeah, right on. Okay, yeah. Thanks, Drew, for your question, and thanks for being on. So I would say the most challenging one by far is the accountability chart. And the reason being is we get into a room and there's, say, 5 or 6 people that are the heads or the executives within the company, and we start from scratch and they don't actually know what's happening. We build out the major functions of the business on the board. So they'll tell me what are the major business functions. We go through an exercise, usually it takes an hour or 2. What are the major business functions? We whittle it down to 3 to 7. They agree on what those 3 to 7 are. And then we say, is there a visionary? Because there's automatically an integrator. Sometimes 50% of the times there's a visionary. So we add that. So now we've got all the seats. And then we start putting out the roles. That doesn't take very long. So everyone can name what are the 3 to 5 accountabilities for each of the seats. And then we start putting names into the seats. So this is when everyone gets tense, because they start to see, uh-oh, like, what if my name's not on the board after this exercise is over? And that happens a third of the time. So that it's a really tense, and it's the first thing we do together. So we really create that clarity of structure. And the leadership team ends up being the people that are on the board. So there's times when there's people in the room that don't end up making it onto the leadership team because they don't run a major business function, or they're not the integrator, or they're not the visionary. So that's probably the hardest one, most challenging one. At that point, everything becomes more simplified and easier within the company, because we've got clear roles and responsibilities, clear functions identified, and it solves a number of issues right away. And it puts people in their unique ability, because sometimes there's people in the wrong seat, and that oftentimes is the owner of the company is sometimes in the wrong seat. Sometimes they're a visionary operating as an integrator, and they're driving everyone crazy because they have so many ideas, and their unique ability is actually to be visionary, and they need to have somebody kind of in between running the day-to-day operations for them. And so that can be a real game changer.
Amazing. Thank you for that. And I actually, just a follow-up question. How easy, I think, when you were explaining the different personality types that exist within a leadership team, I think it's easy to, spot like the visionary based off the what you gave, the examples you gave. Can you give some examples to maybe spot like, oh, this is an integrator, oh, this is the this person needs to be in sales? What are some of those traits that because I think it's important to you saying that it was that's one of the more crucial parts of the process. It's probably better to have those people in the right places early. So can you give some advice about how to kind of identify some of those other roles?
Yeah, for sure. So the cool thing about visionary and integrator is it's a very unique relationship. And when we can get people into their unique abilities, their unique ability. So if you're a visionary, typically only about 5% of the time do you possess both integrator and visionary skill sets. So if you're a visionary, typically you should truly be in the visionary seat. You should be a dreamer. Your job is to come up with those 20 ideas and really drive the future of the company and how we're going to grow this thing. R&D, things that are really creative. You typically do not like to have tough conversations with people. You'd rather somebody else do it. You'll do it, but you don't enjoy it. And you really love to be your head at 30,000 feet. That's where you love to be. So if that's you, that's what you should be doing full time, all the time. And you should have somebody that runs your business for you. And you still have a working relationship with the integrator, but the integrator actually runs your business. Okay, they're the ones that push back on you to say, that idea, it's not good. We shouldn't do that, and here's why. And they have a pulse on everything that's happening in your business. And so an integrator is harder to find. Visionaries are about 22% of the population can be visionary. Only about 5% of our population have the innate ability, the unique ability to be integrator. Integrator is somebody that likes to be in the weeds. They're in the very much disciplined to the business plan. They create the business plan, they take the vision, and they make it into a plan, and they run the P&L. They're always checking, make sure things are running well in the business plan. They remove obstacles and barriers, and they actually like to have those tough conversations. Secretly, these are people that love cut people off in a meeting. Okay, that's who makes up a great integrator. If you love to cut people off in the meeting deep down because they're talking too much, you might be an integrator. And they run on logic. The visionary is more emotion, integrator is more on logic. So if you've got a great integrator, you're lucky, because again, they're rare to find, harder to find, and finding it's typically people that maybe have that accounting, very logical in their thinking approach. They make a great integrator. In terms of sales and marketing and operations and finance, they kind of have you want to find people that fit the core values of your company, which isn't always easy to do. But then you want people that can GWC those roles that you've defined in the seat. So if sales and marketing might be LMA, marketing, sales, hitting revenue, account management, that sort of thing. So you want people probably that are good at relationship building, can manage those relationships, and more kind of people. And then operations, it depends on your business, but you want to really break it down into who fit the core values, but ultimately who gets the roles and can fulfill those accountabilities that are listed in the seat. who's going to jump out of bed to do that role, and then who has the skills and training to do that role well. So it's a very disciplined approach to getting right people in the right seats, and it's a game changer. When you get right people, right seats, it'll solve so many issues that you're experiencing. A lot of our time is spent on HR as leaders, and I know it because I had a team of 50 people across the country, and I was living here in Halifax, so I knew how hard it was to manage all of that. And there was always people leaving, people coming, onboarding, and all that was all part of the job. So it's when you can get right people in the right seats, it'll save you as a leader a huge amount of your time, so you can focus your energy in other places.
Wow, thank you for that, Joe. I appreciate that. An amazing session today. Sadly, we're out of time, folks, so I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. It was a blast, and I really appreciated hosting it because it gave me an opportunity to learn. So thank you, Joe. Again, we appreciate your time, your expertise. If you enjoyed this webinar, then check out our YouTube channel via our website, the Halifax Chamber of Commerce website. Our channel on YouTube, we post all these webinars. You'll be able to find this one as well within the next 48 hours up on our website, sorry. And you can register for these on our website, on our events calendar for any upcoming future business support series. So yeah, without further ado, thank you for your time today, everyone. I hope you learned something. I hope you take it back, and I hope it's able to help you scale your business. So in the meantime, you know where to reach Joe. And like I said, be sure to follow him on socials and on LinkedIn and all those platforms. So thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Josh.